own cause. We got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political correctness will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom lest you pray to Jesus Christ. The press is in our pockets cause it's no longer free. You cannot make a move now that the NSA can see. Don't expect equality, respect, or fair play. The IRS will target those who vote the wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place.
Good afternoon, Philadelphia. This is Rick Robinson. I'm the host of America Off the Rails, and this is my maiden voyage right here on WNJC. Now, I do want to give you just a little bit about the show, but first I want to say welcome to each and every one of you listening and give you a bit of background. I am a nationally syndicated talk show host. I'm on several different platforms, and I have also been building a radio network of my own called the Spark Radio Network. You might already be familiar with some of my people. JD and Stacy actually beat me over here to WNJC by a couple of weeks, and they can be heard every Friday during Primetime Drive right here at 5 Eastern. Now, if you like what we're doing over here, whether it be me or JD or Stacy or both, make sure you check out K98 Talk. We do have a lot of great hosts over there, and most of the stuff that we get really good and going on is actually usually by the time the Conservative Commando Radio Network shuts down for the day. So you can kind of flip back and forth between the two, and it's great and awesome and fun. And I'm rambling, but that's fine. So I do want to mention just a couple of things here. Now, I did mention a moment ago, for many of you, this may be the first time you've ever heard me. And right about now, you're wishing you'd probably turned off the radio. No, I'm just playing. So I want to take a moment to let you know up front, I'm not your normal talk show host. By no means do I consider myself a news guy or a reporter or any of the above. I'm a commentator. I'm an entertainer. I'll do my best to bring you the facts as I see them, but they will always have my opinion with them. I don't consider it my job to tell you what to think. It's my job to make you think. I'll always shoot straight with you, but it will be from my perspective. I do not expect you to agree with me all of the time. Some of you won't agree with me any of the time, and that's fine. I don't care how often we agree or how often we disagree. You as a listener will always be welcome here. Whether I'm bringing you the stories of the day or guests, I always treat the show like you're talking with me in my living room. I hope that you understand that means I hope you will always feel welcome here, and I look forward to getting to know each and every one of you better. Now, from a personal perspective, I will tell you, this can start as a love it or hate it type show, but I ask that you give it time. Eventually, even the people that hate the show at first come to enjoy it. All I ask is duct tape, 1 hour a week. No heads exploding during the show, please. Now, before we go to a quick break, I want to give a huge thank you to Mr. Rick Trader and the Conservative Commando Radio Network. It is an honor to be here, and I look forward to bringing you truth and facts and opinion and fun every single Thursday right here at 2 Eastern. My new home. They're not taking it away from me. It's not going to happen. All right, folks, we will be right back here in just a couple minutes. We do need to take our first official break and pay some bills. Do not go away.
For our own cause, we got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political correctness will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom lest you pray to Jesus Christ. The press is in our pockets cause it's no longer free. You cannot make a move now that the NSA can see. Don't expect equality, respect, or fair play. The IRS will target those who vote the wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. Then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
We will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
Oh, welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Don't expect us to admit a mistake. We're paying off election debts to those on the take. Attorney General's lying even while
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
All right, folks, welcome back. This is America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson, and that intro that you just heard and the bumpers that you hear played throughout the show are actually put together by a group called the Dirty Uncles. You can find their SoundCloud page and go search them out. They have several different songs that are available. That one is available for purchase. It happens to be one of my favorites that they've done. They do have a really unique style. But I did get their permission to have that put together as my intro with some outtakes that they had already put in there and then some additional of my own for promos and bumpers and everything else. But if you like it, make sure you go check out the whole thing because honestly, I didn't do it justice. There's only so much you can do in 30 to 45 seconds. It really is a pretty good song. But anyway, now that we're back from the break and we've got the formal introductions out of the way, let me give you a second to get to know a little bit about me. I do consider myself a conservative. I pretty much probably always have. Now, this is going to be a bit of an unusual show because, like I said, I want to give you guys a little bit of a chance to get to know me, and then we'll start talking topics of the day. Now, just to give you a little bit more background, I've always considered myself conservative, like I said a moment ago. Now, that doesn't mean that I always believe that conservatism is the only answer. And a lot of folks right now are looking at me like I've just sprouted two heads. Look, I've always been a conservative, but I'm also more of a middle-of-the-road kind of guy. Let's just be really honest for a second. And again, listening for the first time, you're not going to want to hear this, but let's be really honest with each other. If we would set aside those 7 or 8 hot-button issues that drive the electorate crazy, and you know which ones I'm talking about, if we could set those things aside, then we would realize we have a lot more in common with each other than we do these idiots in D.C. So one of the things that I have always worked on trying to do from the day that I started this platform, and as it continues to grow, I've continued to do the same thing, and that is to tell people it's time to get involved. Look, I'm going to be honest. I don't care if you disagree with me, agree with me, if you think I'm Satan incarnate. All I want for people to do is get off of the couch, put down the remote, and try to get something done. We as a nation have abdicated our responsibilities. I firmly believe this. We as an electorate have let our people down, our children down, our grandchildren down, and that's why I've started all of this. Now, from your perspective, it doesn't seem like much, but I will tell you I spend probably about 40 hours a week on top of my day job doing everything that I do to keep everything that I am involved in running, aside from not only this show, but several others. And I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I'm saying that because that's how important all of this is to me. And that's why I'm so thankful for platforms like the Conservative Commando Radio Network, where I can be a part of helping to get the message out that I believe this country needs to hear. And I think if we do not do something soon, it is going to be too late. And before anybody starts breaking out their ammunition, that's not what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I do believe that the ultimate reason the Second Amendment exists is because when our government gets to the point where it's too tyrannical, we have the right and the responsibility to overthrow it. But before anybody starts again unlocking their gun safes, that's not what I'm telling you we need to do today. I think there is still time, there is still hope, but I'm just trying to give you a chance to get to know where I'm coming from. Because, again, I'm not your normal talk show host. I'm going to say things that are going to make you crazy. I'm going to say things that are going to make you think, and I'm going to say things that are going to just make you want to turn off the radio. But I'm still going to say them, because that's my job. I didn't start this to get rich. I started this to make a difference. That's been my goal all along. It will continue to be my goal, because I have children. I want to leave them a better country than I found. Because I don't know what happened to the last generation, and I'm not trying to down anybody, but they fell asleep at the switch, and we've got to be the ones to fix it. We're almost out of time to do it. That's what scares me. And if you look at the Democratic primary right now and the Republican primary right now, I think we're in a lot worse shape than anybody wants to admit, but I'll get to that in a moment. Again, just so you understand, this is me. I'm not an ideologue. I'm not a crazy guy. I'm a guy who's trying to make everybody realize that, this country is going to Hades faster than we realize. And the problem is, and again, this is something nobody wants to hear, each party wants the same thing. If you ever just got up in the morning and realized that it doesn't really matter anymore whether you're Republican or Democrat, because they all want the same thing. And notice I didn't say anything about conservative, because I consider myself a Republican in my home state, because that still means conservative here. For those of you who don't know, I broadcast every day from Oklahoma. I am familiar with Philadelphia and Delaware and Jersey because I actually spent a couple of my teenage years over that way. So I have been to places like Pat's and Geno's and went to watch the Phillies games and the Redskins games. I have to say, Philly's probably my number 3 team. Just to give you a little more background, since I've suddenly changed gears to football. Top 3 teams in order happen to be where I've lived in that order, or closest equivalent there too. I was born in Oklahoma, spent most of my childhood here, so Dallas Cowboys were always my team of choice. It's always usually either Cowboys or Kansas City Chiefs, and I never really found the Chiefs entertaining. Then when I was a teenager, we moved to Seattle first. So I became a fan of the Seahawks by default because it was awesome, because I've lived in Oklahoma where we never had our own football team. And yes, unfortunately, when I lived there, they sucked. But I still went. It was kind of like when you went to go watch the Mariners play baseball back then. You didn't really go to watch the Mariners. You went to watch whoever was playing against the Mariners kick their butt. Alright, but anyway, so then we moved over to Delaware, where I spent most of my freshman year. And I kind of became a fan of the Eagles, because, over there it's pretty much Pat's Eagles, as they like to call them, or the Redskins, and I really never was much of a fan of the Redskins. So, those are my 3 teams in particular order based on geographics and time frame. Now, full disclosure, I like football, I watch football, but honestly, my wife is the football nut of the family. Like, Sunday night, it's on. Monday night, it's on. Thursday night, it's on. I'm more of a college football kind of guy. And, my team there is the Sooners. I know, some of you right now are like, oh my god, he's another Big 12 guy. Who the heck let this guy on an East Coast station? Everybody should know that it's SEC over here or bust. Yeah, well, sorry. I'm a Big 12 guy, so that may be another reason for some of you to turn off the radio. But again, this is full disclosure time. This is time for you to get to know a little bit about me, a little bit about what makes me tick, a little bit about why I started this, and then we'll get into the fun stuff. Like the debates lately, which, oh my god, we have so much to talk about there, and probably will be for the next few weeks. So that's another reason why we're spending a few minutes with just you getting to know a little bit about me. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I'm conservative, but I'm also willing to compromise to a point. A lot of us in my circles joke about being what are called conservatarian or libservative, because we're kind of a mixture. Because I believe in old school family values. I'm not going to hold anybody to those same standards, but that's what I believe personally. And I get into arguments about that all day, every day, because I have people that tell me that I'm not conservative enough because I don't want to hold everybody to my same belief standards. And I'm sorry, my scriptures tell me that I'm not supposed to do that. There's only one group that I am supposed to have any say-so over, and those are fellow Christians. Anybody else, I'm not supposed to hold them to my standard. I'm supposed to talk to them, I'm supposed to love them, but I'm not supposed to say, oh my God, you're going to hell because you like girls and you're a girl. That's not how that's supposed to work. You know, not to sound like the Facebook lady, but that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. I mean, it really is pretty much that simple. And that's just me. I'm not going to hold everybody to my same standards, but I am going to try to make you think. And I'm not going to hate you because you disagree with me. I mean, just to give you a little bit more backstory, my whole network actually started with a show that eventually became named Finding Common Ground. And we considered ourselves the low-rent version of Hannity and Combs on the radio, because I had myself, the conservative, and another liberal host that we actually did the show together for quite some time. Since then, the original liberal host schedule has changed, so now I have a much younger liberal host named Bryce Robbins, and the original host was Dave Brown. So I'm not one of these guys that's going to tell you that I don't have conversations with liberals, that I can't stand liberals, because look, I have lots of friends that are liberals. But the difference is I don't have very many friends that are crazy, foaming at the mouth socialist liberals. Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders. I'm just saying. Okay, so I know we said we weren't going to get into this yet, but since I've already slid the topic towards Bernie Sanders, did anybody else watch that debate? Or was it just me? I mean, I know it, but, you know, they tried to pump it up like it was the best debate ever for the Democrats, blah, blah, blah. It was 3.5 hours of, oh my God, what am I watching? But I watched it because I had to, because I have fans that wanted to listen to the show and hear me talk about the debate afterwards. And actually, we did a bit of a pre-debate show and then a post-debate show, and then a couple of folks actually, for after the Democratic one, they actually moved their whole schedule over so they could do a post-debate wrap-up show. And then we were notified about halfway through the day that what was supposed to be a 2-hour Republican debate suddenly became 3 hours and 30 minutes. And then they wound up doing the same thing on the Democratic debate. So the scariest things for me about the Democratic debate, let's just go ahead and start there. The scariest things for me about that debate, first of all, hearing Hillary say basically these words. I'm here in the middle getting it from both sides. I almost threw up in my mouth. I'm not even going to lie. The other scariest thing for me about that debate was basically closing my eyes anytime Bernie Sanders opened his mouth and hearing Jem from Taxi. Sorry, that's who he reminded me of. It was like Jem from Taxi, or if you want to go even a step further, Doc Brown in his manic phases. I kept waiting for him to yell out, Great Scott! Great Scott! It's time for a revolution! I mean, that's all he said over and over again. Revolution, 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 revolution. Dude, that was a TV show that got canceled a long time ago, and it got canceled for a reason. Sit back down and take another puff of your oxygen. Obviously, something is wrong with your brain cells. I mean, look. Obviously, you wouldn't be listening to this radio station if you were a socialist. So can we just say that I don't think that's going to work? I don't think it's a good plan. I don't think it's a good idea. And I think Bernie Sanders needs to sit down and shut up. Plain and simple. I mean, I guess the surprise for me out of that entire debate was, you know, one, Hillary got no poll bump at all. Oh, that sounded terrible. I'm so sorry. But anyway, Hillary got no bump in the polls from that at all. So, basically, she's now flatlining. So, in my estimation, there's really nowhere for her to go but up. And that's why I think Biden is slowly starting to make noise about possibly getting involved in the election. Because I don't think he feels like they have any other choice or any other options but for him to get involved in the election. And that's got to be a scary thought process for the Clintons, because to me, that means that they understand that there's a really good shot that the FBI might not ever stop gunning for her. Why else would Biden all of a sudden out of the middle of nowhere start making this noise about possibly running for the presidential election as the Democratic hopeful when he's been out of it this entire time? Was it strategic? Does he know something that we don't know? Because, you know, with this being Crazy Uncle Joe, somehow I find that a little hard to believe. But the truth of the matter is, I really don't have an answer for you. What I do know is for the party that when you look at their numbers, they're supposed to be the most diverse party between the two. Because we only have two parties in this country, really, if you stop and think about it. The independents just kind of throw themselves in wherever they want to go, and then you've got the libertarians, and don't even get me started on those guys, because I know I have libertarian leanings, but the thing with libertarians that eventually drives me crazy is they all eventually just say, you know what, screw it, we're going to go full anarchy. And maybe I don't understand what the concept of anarchy is, but is anybody else confused by that? Because when I think anarchy, I'm thinking Mad Max and feudalism and despots. And I'm sorry, but based on what I know from human behavior and human nature, I think that's exactly what would happen if we ever actually did officially try to do any type of an anarchist system. I think it works the exact opposite of the socialist system, but with the same results. Eventually it will crumble. There has to be some form of government. Whether we want to admit it or not, people want to be led. And that doesn't mean there aren't people that are born to be leaders, and that doesn't mean that there aren't people that will try to exploit the fact that they know people want to be led, but the simple fact of the matter is people need to have leaders. There are such a things as sheep, and there are such a thing as sheepdogs, and that's not an insult to either one of them. It's just a simple fact. There is such a thing as a sheep and a sheepdog. The difference between a sheep and a sheepdog is the sheep just kind of goes along to get along, and the sheepdog is keeping an eye on all of the sheep and trying to keep the wolves out. So if you really stop and think about it for a second, there are three types of people in the world. There are sheep, there are sheepdogs, and there are wolves. Now, I don't know which one a lot of our politicians are currently, but I think they're falling more into the wolf category. And that's part of what has me concerned about the future of our country, because we are giving up more and more control to these nozzles in D.C., and we're doing it willingly. Because we're too busy trying to keep up with the Joneses. We're too busy worried about who's got the best car, and the biggest house, and the nicest TV, and the most clothes in their closet. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. There are so many other things that are so much more important than how much stuff you have when you die. But that's what this whole country is founded on anymore. Because somebody had this bright, great, wonderful idea that we needed to be the economic center of the world. That's great. Lovely idea. Except it only works for a short time. Look at what happens to every civilization that tries to become the economic center of the world. Eventually they collapse under their own weight. Because they get decadent and spoiled and lazy. And I'm sorry, I know that doesn't apply to a lot of you listening right now, but the simple fact of the matter is there is a segment of our population that is lazy. That is why Bernie Sanders is leading in the polls. Does it scare anybody else that he's filling up football stadiums at his rallies? Does it scare anybody else that he has people screaming "Feel the Burn" and buying t-shirts? My co-host on Finding Common Ground just bought a t-shirt and a bumper sticker. And granted, he's a kid. I get it. He doesn't understand how the world works yet. But there are plenty of adults that are voting for this guy because they want to vote for this guy. Now let this sink in for a second, because bringing this full circle, we haven't talked about the Republican debate yet, but let me tell you what I think is probably going to happen overall. What I think is going to happen is if we don't figure out a way to combat Trump without attacking Trump, eventually he's going to get the nomination. What scares me is if Hillary stays in and Biden does run, then that's going to split the vote. So let me give you my dark horse, holy crap, can't believe I'm actually about to say this out loud prediction for the election, and please, please, please let me be wrong. I have a feeling we are about to see the oligarchy candidate, because that's basically what Trump is. Nobody wants to admit it because he's not conservative. He's a big business guy, and he's a business control guy, and he's worked the system. So we are seriously a few months away from seeing the oligarchist versus the democratic socialist for an election cycle. Not to steal another random quote, but, in the words of Sweet Georgia Brown, ain't nobody got time for that. I'm just saying, that's not what this country was founded on. It's not how much stuff can you give me or how much of the tax code can I warp to benefit my friends. that are in big business. Because let me tell you something about Donald Trump, and this is something nobody wants to talk about, nobody wants to admit, and they all just assume that I'm the crazy one. Hey, you know what? That's fine. If you want to think I'm crazy, that's great. But let me tell you what I know in my heart about Donald Trump. If you honestly think he's going to do one thing to change the tax code, you're not paying attention. He just admitted a few weeks ago in front of millions of Americans that he's figured out how to work both the bankruptcy system and the tax code to make sure that he makes phenomenal amounts of money. Now, I know that all of you that are supporters of his are like, but Rick, that means he could get the country making phenomenal amounts of money. Do we really want this country right now, in the state that it's in, to have phenomenal amounts of money? We need to make some fundamental changes, and I don't mean Obama style, before we wind up giving this country, again, phenomenal amounts of money. I'm not saying that I don't want everyone here to succeed. What I am saying is there are so many things that we could do to fix the problems in this country that don't involve idiots like Donald Trump and crazy people like Bernie Sanders. I mean, come on. Are you seriously telling me that if we took the numbers today with the fact that Hillary's starting to flatline and the direction that things are going for Bernie and the crowds that he's bringing in, and unlike Trump, we know he doesn't have the money to pay the crowds, so they've got to be coming in from somewhere, and it's because they've got their hand out for more free stuff. Which is all great, well, fine, awesome, good, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But the simple fact of the matter is, we're in trouble. Because we are seriously about to have to probably pull the lever for either a socialist or a crony capitalist. Because, I mean, it's like the start of a bad joke. A socialist and a crony capitalist walk into a bar. What happens? Nobody knows, because it's never happened before at the same time. I mean, I don't understand this country anymore. Can I just say that? Just to be honest, I don't understand this country anymore. All right, so I think I've rambled about enough. At this point, we're about to take a break. When we come back, what you're about to hear is an interview that I recently did with Governor John Sununu. You may remember that name from the first Bush administration. He actually wrote a book about President Bush 41 entitled The Quiet Man. He actually sat down with me for a half an hour recently and discussed the book in depth and the upcoming election cycle and some of his concerns about the country and the direction that we're headed in. So I do hope you stay tuned. I know I spent a lot of time talking about myself on this particular episode. I promise that doesn't happen that often. I'm not one of those big head kind of guys who only likes to talk about himself. Honestly, once you get to know me, you'll realize I really don't like to talk about myself at all. But at this point, we are going to go ahead and take another break at what is now the bottom of the hour. Where does the time go? This is America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. Thanks for everybody tuning in right here with me on my maiden voyage on WNJC 1360 out of Philadelphia, baby. We will be right back with John Sununu, author of The Quiet Man, the biography about President Bush 41. Don't go away.
For our own cause, we got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political correctness will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom, lest you pray to Jesus Christ. The press is in our pockets cause it's no longer free. You cannot make a move now that the NSA can see. Don't expect equality, respect, or fair play. The IRS will target those who vote the wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
For our own cause, we got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political correctness will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom, lest you pray to Jesus Christ. The press is in our pockets cause there's no longer free. You cannot make a move now that the NSA can see. Don't expect equality, respect, or fair play. The IRS will target those who vote the wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the place.
Off the Rails, I'm your host, Rick Robinson, and right now I am joined by a very special guest, Mr. John Sununu, former Chief of Staff for the George Herbert Walker Bush administration, Bush 41, also former governor and the author of The Quiet Man. Wanted to make sure I got the introduction down for you this time now that I'm not trying to do 14 things at once. Good afternoon, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm fine.
It is an honor to have you here, sir. So like I told you during the break, I think I want to spend at least as much of this segment as I can giving you a chance to talk about what inspired you to write the book, some of your favorite moments from the book, just give us a general overview. I don't want you to give away too much because we want folks to go buy it. Speaking of which, the link to the book will be in the podcast episode that publishes here later as well. For anybody
thank
that's
you
interested.
very much. Well, I wrote The Quiet Man, which is about the presidency of the first President Bush, to put between the two covers of a book what I thought were his extremely significant accomplishments, many of which people don't really recognize how significant those achievements were, and to put into one place, if you will, a record of the facts of what happened almost a quarter of a century ago that made a huge difference in terms of stabilizing the world at that time and improving things in America as well as around the world. And I wanted to give this president the credit he deserves, get this president the credit he deserves, because he frankly was much too modest a man to brag about it for himself. And I thought after 25 years, it was time that somebody did some bragging for him.
All right, so, yeah, sorry about that. I had a technical issue on our side. Got that cleared up. Do apologize. Yeah, so basically what you're saying is the book, basically you wanted, just to summarize, what you wanted to do was give people the perspective of Bush 41, the first President Bush, that you had, because
right.
I agree
right.
with you. I mean, I have to admit, I'm younger. I grew up in the Reagan era. I was in second grade. I watched Reagan get shot on TV in second grade. It's actually one of the most embedded memories that I have. But I was just starting to understand what politics was, really, as a fledgling adult during the Bush administration. And I think, in some ways, he's gotten a pretty bad rap. To be honest, and I kind of get the impression from the book. I have to admit, I have not had a chance to read it yet, but I do plan on it. I kind of get the impression just from the few interviews that I've heard and the little bit that you just said there, that what you're trying to do is basically give folks the perspective of the man that you actually knew instead of how he was
right.
portrayed.
Right. Look, everyone recognizes that George Bush came into office after Ronald Reagan sort of set the table. Reagan had rebuilt America's defense capacity. The Soviet Union saw that they couldn't keep up, and there were indications that Gorbachev recognized this and wanted to somehow perhaps bring the Soviet Union into better interactions with the rest of the world. And Bush saw this and used, frankly, the leverage that comes with peace through strength, with the strength that Reagan had put in place. Reagan had built this up, and Bush used this to create the results that were available with the great diplomacy that Bush was able to bring to the game. For example, he first of all had to unify our NATO partners, Margaret Thatcher, Helmut Kohl, Francois Mitterrand. Each one had a slightly different agenda, and you can't deal with the Soviet Union with a divided agenda amongst the Allies. And Bush worked hard on each one of them individually to create a common agenda, and they agreed that they would make this a significant initiative of suggesting a major reduction of U.S. forces in Europe, troops and armor, if the Soviet Union would make an equivalent reduction. And that offer was put on the table, and Gorbachev essentially accepted it and began withdrawing the troops that were occupying the countries in Eastern Europe, the Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania. And in essence, George made the wager, and Gorbachev accepted the opportunity to do that, and it opened the process up for free elections there. And as we know, what eventually happened, we ended up with what George Bush called a Europe whole and free. The Czechs were freed, the Poles were freed, they had elections, they had democratically elected governments. Even in East Europe, Eastern Germany, which was sort of seen as the place that the Soviets would give up last, Gorbachev allowed the relaxation which led to the collapse of the Berlin Wall. And on that amazing day, we were in the Oval Office. The press, the news came through the press. We held a small news conference. And I think one of the amazing demonstrations of presidential discipline is that George Bush knew that if he overgloated, if he overcrowed about the fact that the Berlin Wall had come down, that the hardliners in the Soviet Union could take advantage of this and perhaps either get rid of Gorbachev entirely or tie his hands from doing any more. And Bush had the discipline to certainly express great satisfaction at the freeing of Eastern Europe, the final symbol coming down, but he did it in such a way that he didn't embarrass Gorbachev. Other folks also know about the other great foreign policy achievement of George Bush. When Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, Bush made a very simple statement: this aggression shall not stand. And he said that if Saddam Hussein did not leave Kuwait, we would use force and get him out. And the art form, the artistry of the presidency that Bush demonstrated was putting together a coalition that included not only Arab nations going to battle against another Arab nation, but it included the former foe of the at the superpower level. The Soviet Union themselves became part of that coalition. And in a very patient way, the president built up our resources, and then in about 5 days of combat, expelled Saddam from Kuwait. And then Bush did something very controversial. He chose not to follow Saddam into Baghdad. And at the time he was criticized, but now with hindsight, I think everybody recognizes that it was an extremely smart move not to do that. Otherwise, he would have been caught in the quicksand of an occupation. And that's the last thing in the world that the world needed at that time. Those are the two most important foreign policy achievements the president's recognized for. What I try to do in the book is to also point out that he was a great domestic policy president, and that's something most people don't understand. George Bush passed more legislation, more conservative, free market-oriented, individual liberty-oriented legislation than any president since, except for Lyndon Johnson and Franklin Roosevelt. And the Bush legislation was founded on free market principles and founded on individual freedom and liberty. It included the very much criticized Budget Pact of 1990, the 5-year pact in which the Democrats, Tom Foley was the Speaker, he controlled the House 260 to 165. George Mitchell was the head of the Democrats in the Senate. They controlled the Senate 55 to 45. They were determined not to let the president have a multi-year budget without some taxes. And Bush looked around and saw the economy faltering. The savings and loan crisis had really created havoc in the real estate side of our economy, and the economy was truly slowing down and unemployment was growing. He had just sent our young men and women to the Middle East. This was in August, September, October of 1990. He had just sent them to get ready to take on Saddam Hussein in Kuwait, and the last thing he could tolerate would be a sequester of the defense funds while those folks were needing the resources to do what had to be done to get Saddam out of Kuwait to protect themselves. And so the president had to accept some taxes in the package. The package he negotiated was one that included an increase in the gas tax, a gas tax that had not been indexed for inflation in almost a decade. And what he got in return for it was extremely important. He got 3.5 times as the size of the tax increase. He got 3 in spending cuts. He got a new set of budgeting rules which put a cap on the growth of spending. It also required that any new programs have their own funding process so that you couldn't just add deficit spending to the package. And what happened after that budget was passed is the economy began growing. We had the great growth years of the early and mid-1990s, and we began to generate surpluses for the first time in decades. And the surpluses that Bill Clinton loves to take credit for are really the result of George Bush taking the political penalty of accepting a piece of legislation that had some taxes in it, but one which is extremely important to creating a dynamic economy and creating surpluses and growth and jobs. On top of that, he passed the Clean Air Bill based on free market principles and flexibility instead of command and control. He vetoed a civil rights bill that was a quota bill and got it rewritten so that it was truly a fair civil rights bill. He proposed and got the Americans with Disabilities Act. He got legislation which deregulated the energy industry, and we're really benefiting from those things. He restructured the farm program so that a great chunk of the old subsidy programs were actually converted into incentives for exports. And over a short period of time, we became the biggest exporting nation in agriculture in the world. And that was a huge contribution to the economy. He passed a crime bill that began to provide the resources to the cities to deal with what at that time had been a growing crime problem. He passed legislation and an executive order on immigration, which gave a focus on immigration to people coming into the country with special talents, and converted some of the allocations of immigration slots to people coming in to complete families, so that the immigration program became an efficient program. There are countless other examples of his commitment to good policy, including getting the 50 governors together, only the third time in history that a president has called a convocation of all the governors, and they focused on trying to recognize how important K through 12 education was, and each one of them went back with a commitment to focus their state resources on K through 12 education. So the point is this was the president that, although he's known for his foreign policy, really had a huge level of success in conservative principles on the domestic side as well.
All right, folks, we're on with former Governor John Sununu, author of The Quiet Man, and he's been basically filling us in on his perspectives when it comes to Bush 41. Now, we are getting to the point where we're about to have to start winding down the show, but before you have to go, I do have some questions, because you brought up some interesting things that are honestly kind of the flip side parallels of some things that are going on today. You mentioned the whole the deal with Russia and the Berlin and the wall coming down and everything else, and how Bush could have basically taken his victory lap and he could have pounded his chest and said, I did this, but he didn't do that because he knew that it might have adverse consequences. Fast forward to today, right, and we have a president who's basically taking his victory lap in any way that he can, and then touting down anybody who tries to say, I don't think this is a good idea. It just seems to me
you've touched on a very important point on what's happening today. This agreement with Iran, if the president had stuck to his own criteria that he laid out a few years ago as to what would define a good deal, he might be able to get some support for this. But this is a bad deal, and the Iranians knew that this president was desperate to get his name on an agreement, and they played him for a fool. And for him to be bragging about this deal is really ludicrous. It reminds me, with him, kind of flaunting this deal and saying that it was either this deal or war, it reminds me of Neville Chamberlain coming back and saying, peace is at hand. I think they were both equally naive as to the effect of that. But as you point out, this president wanted to beat on his chest and get some credit.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it comes across. And I mean, it astounds me that someone that could be as intelligent as he has to be could be this naive. I mean, because he's not a stupid person. He's not common sense. I don't think he has much more than a modicum of that, but he's not stupid. And I don't understand how it is that nobody's calling him on the fact that he basically just admitted that he lied all the way through the 2012 run-up, because he said they were nowhere near the capabilities that they have right now. He said that over and over and over again, that their capability for nuclear arms was not our concern.
He misled America on everything. He's misled America on Obamacare. He's misled America on this issue, as you pointed out here. He's misled America on frankly, every major issue he talks about. It's the hallmark of this administration.
So I guess, as someone who's actually watched and been a part of the political system and kind of over the years still kind of from the ear of it kind of kept your ear to the ground, or the feel of it kind of kept your ear to the ground, so to speak, What do you think we can do at this point? Because I've kind of gotten the impression now where the majority of the American people just honestly don't care anymore. As long as they've got a TV to watch and they've got food in front of them, those are really the two things that seem to concern them most, and that worries me.
Well, we are at a tipping point in terms of electorate. I do think the key to solving any sort of problems is presidential leadership. I know people talk about gridlock, but there is no solution to gridlock without presidential leadership. Congress cannot organize itself. It needs to be led. The opposition needs to be led, and the party of the president needs to be led. And I think one of the things I try to point out in my book is that Bush achieved all that great, fairly conservative legislation with a Congress that was completely in the hands of the Democrats. So it can be done with a president who knows how to lead and is willing to work on a daily basis to get those results. When we were trying to negotiate a budget agreement, Dan Rostenkowski, who was the Democratic chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, we had him down for about 24 one-on-ones with the president to break log jams on issues. The president has to spend political capital. If we can elect a conservative president who knows how to deal with the legislature, who has understood how to make executive decisions, who is willing to take the political fire for making hard decisions in the best interest of the country. I'm not saying we can reverse everything horrible that's been done in the last 6.5 years in one fell swoop, but given 4 or 8 years of a conservative president, we can get this back to where we were.
And I do completely agree. I think at this point we're going to have to get somebody conservative in the White House. The problem is, anytime we vote for anybody who tells us they're conservative, they get where we put them, and then they wind up doing much the same thing as the folks that came before them, which is becoming my concern at this point.
Let's be fair. Our presidents, our Republican presidents, have produced very conservative results while they were there. They sometimes have had to deal with difficult circumstances. And after 9/11, I recognized that the second Bush, George W. Bush, had to increase the budget dramatically in order to rebuild our national security structures and so on. But for the most part, I think our Republican presidents in the last 50 years have been extremely conservative, considering what they could and couldn't do with the Congresses they had to deal with. Look, any one of our candidates that are running now will be 100 times better than what's in the White House now.
No, I completely agree, and I think you might have misunderstood. I meant as a whole. It seems like when we finally get the pendulum to where we think it's going to start swinging conservative for the entire group of the legislature and everybody else, it seems that they get in there and then things kind of go the same way as before. But you do bring up one last question I kind of want to get to before we do really have to call it, because we've got another show coming on right behind us here in just a couple minutes. You mentioned that any of the folks that are running right now would be better than who we have in the office currently, and I do wholeheartedly agree with that. Well, except for maybe Krispy Kreme. I'm not sure I could pull the lever for him. But anyway, so do you have a particular front runner of your own at the moment? Or
I don't, but I do lean towards governors and former governors. I really think we need somebody who's herded the cats of a legislature in the past, who's made executive decisions without being able to hide in the multitudes of a legislature. And so I do think at this time we need somebody that has come out of a state house, out of the governor's office. But there are other candidates as well that if they get the nomination, I'll certainly support. But if you're asking my preferences, it is in most of the governors we have running. I do think that the system and the process will sort things out, and I think we're going to end up with a very good nominee, as long as we all remember that with so many candidates, most of us will not get our first choice. You know, we're all divided among so many candidates that most of us are not going to get our first choice, and we have to recognize that's going to happen, and we've got to pull together after there is a nominee.
Yeah, I agree, because I think that was our biggest failing in 2012, is we had too many people that did not want the final pick to be Romney. I voted for him.
Right.
I honestly was a little disappointed with his stances during the debates because I thought there were a couple of very big points that he caught the administration in falsehoods, and his group did not pursue them. And actually, when I reached out to contact his group to find out why they weren't pursuing them, I was basically told in no uncertain terms that they had chosen to take a higher stance when it comes to the debates. And it doesn't make any sense to me because he had him dead to rights twice and he didn't use it. So I don't know if he ever decides to run again, which at this point I don't think he will. I don't think I could support him again, but at this point I pretty much agree with you. We have to get somebody that's conservative in there, and at this point I guess it really doesn't matter who it is, because if we get another Democrat in there, especially the ones we have to choose from now, we're just I don't think there's enough time to save anything anymore. But at this point, we are about out of time.
If that happens, we'll all be looking at land
somewhere. But yeah. So anyway, we are actually about out of time. I just want to take a moment again to say thank you very much for appearing with us this evening, sir. It has been my honor. Again, as a reminder, this show will be going out all over the place once it concludes, so there will be a lot more folks that will hear it in the future that weren't even listening to it tonight. And from what I can see here, we've had a pretty big turnout in the chat room, so I know we've got a pretty big live turnout as well, because the numbers are usually pretty different between the number of folks that we have in the chat and the number of folks listening live. So I do want to thank you again for coming on with us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right,
Thanks
and
for having me.
Just as a reminder,
we'll do it again sometime.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. And anytime you want to come back on, I now officially consider you a friend of the show, so you have a sitting invitation whenever you want. All right.
Great.
So
thank you. Keep up the good work.
One last thing before you go. Remind everybody again the name of the book and where they can find it.
The name of the book is The Quiet Man, The Indispensable Presidency of George H.W. Bush, and you can get it at your local bookstore or Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any way you like ordering books. Everybody's got it.
All right, folks. Well, it's been a pleasure having John Sununu on the show with us tonight. We're going to have to cut things out of here. We've got Red Nation Rising coming up here in just 3 minutes, so I have got to make room for them to come on. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in. And again, if you missed it live, don't forget we've got podcasts going out everywhere. You guys take care. We will be back with you tomorrow. Actually, rerun tomorrow, back live Monday.
Thank you.
Both did everything you earned by breaking your backs. We're gonna redistribute when we make our pay tax. Hey, sit back down.
Screw you guys. I'm going home. Later.
Game over.